I would like to welcome you all back. For those of you that have been attending the first couple of workshops on ADAudit, and for those of you that are new to this workshop, we will be sending out a link to the recordings of both Workshop 1 and Workshop 2 and any documents that we delivered at the end of this workshop. So just as a quick recap on the workshops that we've done for ADAudit, the first workshop was on more configuration, making sure that you're getting the most out of ADAudit with the configurations. So we made sure that we had security in place, we had alerting in place, we had all of your audit policy and advanced audit policy in place, and some other configurations. Last week, we dove into kind of a tour of ADAudit Plus with a highlight of privileged access at the forefront. So we talked about some of the default reports, we talked about how to customize reports, we talked about how to create custom reports, as well as set up alerts for your environment. So that was last week's workshop. I will say at the beginning that we strongly encourage all of you that have, whether it be ADAudit or any of the Manage Engine Active Directory products, to please communicate with us with regard to other workshops that you're looking for. We have had workshops on AD Manager Plus. If you want to have those, we can send you a link. I'm assuming that most of you that are attending the ADAudit Plus have also attended the AD Manager Plus workshops. And if you just want to email me or the events team, we can get you that information. Anyway, so that's where I wanted to start off. For those of you that don't know who I am, my name is Derek Melber, and I am the technical evangelist for the AD Solutions team here at Manage Engine. And what that means is I get to go around the world meeting administrators of Active Directory, meeting companies that are running Active Directory, and I try in every way that I can to help them become more efficient, more secure, and just better understand Active Directory better. So I have a pretty awesome job. Just to kind of give you a recap, I know I mentioned this last week, we, Manage Engine, will be doing seminars in Orange County, California, Pleasanton, California, which is right outside of San Francisco, Chicago, and Dallas, the second and third week of August. So if you live in those areas, please come register for these events. They're fantastic events. You get to hear me talk about different things. Other Manage Engine Active Directory gurus will also be talking. You can ask your personal questions. It's just a great environment. And we feed you lunch, so that's even best, right? Okay, so let's get into this week's workshop. In this week's workshop, what I want to do is I want to talk about some best practices. As I talk with the others here in the AD Solutions team about ADAudit Plus, there seems to be trends of questions, comments, posts about things and how to do things inside of ADAudit Plus. So what we wanted to do was try to help you better understand the solution by kind of taking the cream of the crop questions and giving you answers for those. So one of the things that we had questions about was in regard to the audit policy and the advanced audit policy. Now, if we go down to group policy and we look at the GPO that I have set up to establish the auditing in my environment. Now again, we went over this in week 1, but I'm not going to go in detail. I'm just going to show you what I have set up. So you can see here that I have my audit policy set up. And in my environment, because I actually have a Windows Server 2008 R2 domain controller, I have advanced auditing set up, and I have advanced auditing being triggered. So the question that we often get is a concern around if these policies change. And if the policy changes, can ADAudit Plus track that? And of course the answer is yes. So if you come here under your advanced GPO reports and you look at your security settings changes, you can see that you have the ability to track when the audit policy changes. Now, this is a new setting. Let's see if I can get anything to show up here. Here we go. So you'll see the old version, the new version, and you can see that the maximum password age changed. Now, this is telling you that in these areas, well, that's the password policy. Let's actually go back to, let me go back in time a little bit here. I should have changes maybe over the last year. I don't change this often for obvious reasons. There we go, the audit policy. So if I come in here, I can actually see, if I can actually, instead of new changes, they should be showing me the changes themselves. I apologize for this. I'm not really showing my changes. Why am I not showing my changes? Let me think here for a second. They should be showing up there under my security settings, and I don't know why they're not. So if I did have a change, and I know I have a change in here somewhere, I just looked at the darn thing, but now I'm not finding it. But it will show here the audit policy change. So the idea is you can actually set up alerts if certain aspects of the group policy changes. Now, in my opinion, you not only want to know if the audit policy changes, you want to know if any GPO changes. Now, under the alerts, and you can view this information, you can actually see and you can configure when certain things are modified. Now, last week I kind of talked a little bit about how alerts work with regard to reports. Now, let's just look at this GPO deleted alert. So the idea is that if I have a GPO that's deleted and it would show up on the GPO deleted report, then I'm going to get an alert about that. So the idea here is that you can actually go in here and you can determine what you want to alert on. And so all of these are actually reports. So you would want to set up a GPO modified alert that is associated with changes in the GPO. Every time a GPO changes, you are going to get some type of an alert. Now remember, alerts by default show up in the dashboard and the alerts page, as well as you can send email notifications. So this is the idea, that you can actually go in and you can look to see when things are changing inside of group policy, which would be the audit policy and the advanced audit policy. The audit policy and the advanced audit policy are located under the security settings. Okay? Now, kind of a bigger picture of these GPO reports. We do not have them all broken down, but group policy objects are broken down by client-side extensions, CSEs. There is a CSE for security, which includes password policy, and account logout policy. There's a CSE for administrative templates. There's a CSE for user rights. So we've gone in and we've helped you break down some of the most common client-side extensions, giving you reports on them. Because there is a report on that particular area, you can actually set up an alert for that particular area. Okay? So when you want to track changes and get alerts on things that are changing around ADAudit Plus, you can do that so that you know when something changes. Now, another question that we get, and this is actually quite common, is someone will go into Active Directory, they'll make a change, they'll go back to ADAudit Plus, they'll do a refresh, and nothing will show up. Well, some customers that have had ADAudit Plus for a while didn't see or haven't upgraded to the version that has the ability to do real-time information fetching. Now, this real-time information fetching, we feel, is a vital aspect of ADAudit Plus. You'll see here that you can either go to RealTime or you can schedule it. Historically, ADAudit Plus was on a schedule every 15 minutes. And with a schedule of every 15 minutes, that sounds like a really good configuration when you start looking at the amount of information that is being sent across the network, or really most important, how often a domain controller is going to be tapped on the shoulder for its events. But let's look at both of those considerations. If you have a 15-minute fetch time, that means that every 15 minutes your domain controllers are going to be sending all of the changes that they have out of the security log to ADAudit Plus. Now, that's nice that every 15 minutes your domain controller is being touched instead of constant. But the idea that we put in place is we use a Microsoft API, and when something goes into the security log that is vital to us, we fetch it in real time. That means that your domain controller is sending less information only when it needs it, and the overall bandwidth on the network is reduced over time versus big spikes every 15 minutes. Now, what does this mean for the administrator? Well, I just got off the phone with a group, and the group talks about products and whatnot, and I was really emphasizing the idea of ADAudit Plus and how it can help administrators. Now, for me, as an old administrator, if I'm in Active Directory, I know when I'm changing something. But if I have other administrators that can come into Active Directory and they can perform tasks such as disabling accounts, I can't see that. Now, I want you to take a step back and think about how you deal with fires around Active Directory. I'm going to guess that most of the time when you have a fire, it came from a phone call. Someone called, someone worse stopped in your office and said, my team, my application, me, I'm not being productive, and I don't know why. Things are working and all of a sudden it doesn't work. That could potentially be because someone made a modification in Active Directory that directly affected that access. Now, of course, service accounts are critical for this, but it could also be some of your built-in privilege groups. It can also just be a group such as finance accounts receivable. If someone is removed from that, now they won't have access to those resources. So the idea of real-time helps you, the administrator, understand when things change. So for example, let's say that someone decides to go in and someone decides to change the enterprise admins group. Now, if someone is added to this group, let's see if we add Vanessa. If I add someone to the group, today, if you don't have ADAudit Plus or you don't have this configured, how do you know when that group was modified? Well, I know when the group was modified because I receive an immediate alert. Now, I only receive these alerts in real time if I have real time established and I have an alert set up for that particular report. So you see that I have modified admin groups set up here. My modified admin groups points to my modified admin groups report, and then my actual modified admin group report is customized to include enterprise admins plus these particular groups that aren't by default. So you see how the bigger picture really starts coming together? And these configurations are vital for you. They're vital for you because this is the way for you to see what's changing in real time with regard to Active Directory. Now, I'm not saying you go into every single report and you set up an alert for everything, because that's not required. But you can see that if you set up reports for GPO changes and you set up reports for admin groups being modified, this gives you a huge upper hand on seeing things in the background which are hard to see. Okay, let's move on and talk about a third best practice. This is somewhat of a new configuration. If you go under the Admin tab and you go to Technicians, you have the ability to define what, roles. You have the ability to define what the particular role is going to include. So you now get to define new roles, and in the roles, you define which reports they have access to. So depending on which area you want them to have access, you can allow them to see different reports. So I just had an email from someone that is an OU administrator. Well, that OU administrator might only need to see OU type of changes. So this is a way that you can carve out who gets to see which reports and how those reports are displayed. Not only do you get to delegate who gets reports, but you also have the ability to change who can administer, who can set up an alerts, archive events, plus general settings and whatnot. So reports is one area, administration is another area, and then configuration is yet another area. And you can see you have read and write capabilities here depending on what you want to give someone the ability to control in ADAudit Plus. So what we've tried to do is go through the different critical areas within ADAudit Plus and give you, the administrator, the ability to give someone else the ability to view that information. Now, why is this important? Well, I'm going to go back to reports. Most of you on this workshop, you have auditors. Those auditors seem sometimes to constantly ask you questions about, I need a report for this, I need a report for that. Well, since the auditor is already on the security team, and the security team has the ability to access this information, why not just give them the ability to access the information themselves? That is going to get them out of your hair for 90% of what they're asking about, because they now can just use ADAudit Plus to come across and get the information that they need when they need it. So this idea of technicians or delegation is extremely important when you start looking at the overall picture of how you can set up ADAudit Plus in your environment. Okay? Now, a little side note here, if you do have any questions, there are some, I have some great resources working with me today, and if you ask questions through the interface, they should be able to get to those questions as we go along. If the question is so pressing or so important, they'll mention the question towards the end just so that everybody hears the question. And if your question isn't answered, we'll get back to you in an email with the answer. So that's how we're taking care of questions so we can keep the flow going. So we've talked about alerting with critical aspects such as the audit policy and group membership. We talked about how RealTime helps give you insight into things that are happening right now. And then we just talked about the delegation model, which the delegation model really allows you to offload some of the report generation to someone else. Now, another critical area is with regard to archiving. Now, the archive is here under the administrative tab or admin tab. And when you start looking at the archive, we've tried to give you flexibility of how you need to archive events. Now, sometimes you want to have a longer history of information inside of ADAudit Plus that you can query. As you notice, I just went back to a year. Other times, you may only need to go back a month, and you may only want to go back a month based on the amount of information that's being generated. So when you start looking at logon information, you may want to only go back, 2 to 4 weeks, because this archive, the database is going to fill up, especially if you have a tremendous number of users. But when you start looking at maybe computer modification, or you start looking at network policy server or file integrity, these things may not be that important to you, and they may not even change that often. So in one case, you may want to make them short, 30 days or more. And then other times, if it isn't changed that often, you may just want to increase to maybe 90 days on how often you want to keep it in the database until you go in and you archive that information. The default archive is here, and you can change that, of course. And you can also run the archive now. So if for some reason you're running out of data, you've had a big spike in logons or spike in something else, and you want to make sure you archive the data before something fills up, you can actually run it before 2 a.m. with just a click, and it will archive that information. So we've tried to give you as much granular control around the archiving as we possibly could, just so you have more control of what's live in the database and when things are being archived. Now, another thing that we are releasing is the ability for you to actually search the archives. So the searching of the archives is a very important piece, and for those of you that like to stay up on the newer versions of ADAudit Plus, that archiving is something that you want to get your hands on. So please be alert to what we're sending you with regard to upgrades, and get that latest upgrade. Now, with regard to upgrades, that's my next step. My next step is talking about the correct such that you don't have to update the client piece, just the server piece. So how do you upgrade? Well, for those of you that might be new to ADAudit Plus, let me walk you through some things. First, if you go to our main web page and you go and click on Active Directory, and you go to Active Directory Auditing, and you go to Download, you're going to be sent to this page, which of course is the main download for 32 and 64-bit, but you also have these service packs. And these service packs are really how we go and we allow you to upgrade. Now, we give you the build numbers here, and if you go back to ADAudit Plus and you go to your license, you can see what you're on. I'm on 4690, and I can go to 4691 or 469 up to 3, okay? So the service pack upgrades are vital for you to get the new features, okay? These steps down here are very important. What we don't want is, one, for you to, for some reason, corrupt your database and lose it without a backup. So notice, we're saying stop the service, then run a backup. How many of you have heard in your entire IT career, backup, backup, backup? Well, guess what? We're encouraging you to back up, okay? We tell you how to back it up, and we give you the step-by-step here on how to back up your database, okay? Then you update, and after the update, that's when you go and you make sure things are in place, and then you do not terminate the upgrade process prematurely, and then you start things up again. All right? So make sure that you're performing your backups. If there is any issue, we want you to immediately email with an exclamation point, high priority, to the support team at support@ADAuditPlus.com. Please, okay? That is the way that we can help you. If for some reason something went wrong, please, we even give you the access right here, all right? So we try to put everything in one spot, And of course, some things fall through the cracks, whether it be on your end or our end, but we feel that if you follow the protocol of what we list for you for the upgrades, even if something goes wrong and you email us, that goes a long way into us helping you get through your problem the quickest, okay? So that's how you can go and you can do your upgrades. Now let's talk about excluding user accounts. I am not a huge proponent of administrators excluding their user accounts from ADAudit Plus. I know that you may want to do that, but think about the bigger picture of things. And not only, I don't want to say that anyone is going to try to do something malicious, but if you exclude your account and someone finds it, they're going to wonder why you excluded your account. So be a little cautious about that. But what about situations where you want to exclude an account? If you come over here to the Admin tab, you can exclude user accounts, and these will be excluded from log-on auditing. Not from everything else, just log-on auditing. And you can simply come in and exclude those accounts. Which accounts might you want to exclude? Well, we have many customers that are excluding their service accounts, because service accounts have a constant heartbeat, and they are, depending on the application and how often they go and re-log on or re-authenticate, you may have a multitude of logons per day for service accounts. So you don't really care about those service accounts and where they log on. So you can actually exclude them. Now, I have had some customers want the opposite, and that is they have actually built custom reports in such a way that they're leveraging these success logons, user logon activity, and instead of them going through, let's see if I can get some information here, right? So instead of them just saying, okay, I don't care about service accounts, what they want to do is if a service account logs on, right, username logs on from a wrong host name, they want an alert. Now, how often is that going to happen? Not very often. So the rub is, do I want to eliminate all service accounts from being reported for logons to free up my database, or do I want to allow that and then set up an alert of when a service account logs on to the wrong computer? I do not believe that the second one is critical if you have the correct service account configurations. Now, if you go out to our blog, the Active Directory blog, there are blogs on how to securely configure your service accounts. Let me just run through one of my favorite settings. If you go to service accounts, you go to the service account properties, and the account, you can actually control which computers the account logs into. So with this configuration, the service account can't successfully log on, so having an alert for a success log on to the wrong computer wouldn't even be valid. So what we recommend is you exclude the account, set up the service accounts securely, and now you don't have to worry about that, okay? Now, another setting that we highly recommend, that I went over last week, and I want to quickly review again, is to actually set up custom reports for your service account modifications. So I have a service account modification report here, and if I go back to the last 6 months, you will see all the changes that have occurred for my service accounts, right? Account enabled, user account control configured, all these things. This is important because if someone goes in and modifies a service account configuration, most likely it's going to be detrimental to that service running. And you're going to get a phone call within 5 minutes to 5 days saying, sorry, the application doesn't run. So what I have done is I have created custom reports around service account modifications. So you'll see here that I've gone in and I've created one that says if anything around these user accounts is modified, then I'm going to go in and I'm going to run a report and also an alert on that. So this is a very important aspect and a best practice that we encourage because service accounts are so important and you have to track them so much and they can cause so many issues. Okay? Now, the next one that we want to talk about is really under file audit. Now, remember that file audit is a small component here compared to our other product, which is File Audit Plus. File audit here, yes, works fantastic. It's just not in real time like File Audit Plus is. So the file audit here can give you the control that you want. It just may not be in enough time that you need it. And if you need that real time, please go look at File Audit Plus. But what I want to focus on here within the file audit are the configurations, especially of the exclude. Sometimes you don't care about certain file types. You don't care about a certain name. So what you want to do is you want to come in here and you want to exclude all the things that you're not going to have to sift through when you look at the reports and you look at the data that are being pulled up. So this is a way for you to go in and you can exclude certain areas of your file auditing to make sure that you're not wasting the time of ADAudit Plus to gather that information. So again, you have file types, you have the process name, and then you have certain users that you can exclude from the file audit as well. People that maybe should have access to that, because again, if we start looking at users that should have access and someone logs in as that user and gains access as that user, how do you know if it was the correct human? Well, you don't unless you really have good surveillance, which kind of borders on some sketchy issues in an organization. But we definitely want you to consider the exclusion here so you're not filling up your logs faster than you need to. Now, another area that we wanted to focus on, and of course with security being at the forefront, is the idea of SSL. So with SSL, we give you the option to enable SSL so that you are communicating with ADAudit Plus securely. Now, ADAudit Plus has its own onboard certificate, so you can come here and you can just enable it. Now, if you want to integrate some third-party certificate, that we have online the steps for that. We don't have too many customers doing that, but we do have a step-by-step if you do want to use your own certificate authority to set up SSL. So again, we're giving you this time, we're giving you the options on how you want to communicate with ADAudit Plus, whether it be normal, which is the default is port 8081, or through SSL. Now, last week, or actually the first week, we talked about some configurations here in the admin tab with regard to alerting. Now, the alerting is extremely important when you want to make sure that information is being collected. So we wanted to cover this again as a best practice. If for some reason a domain controller stops reporting back log information, the email address here is going to be emailed as a notification for that. So this not only is a best practice, this is almost a vital configuration to make sure that you're being alerted on when things aren't working anymore. We also prefer that you set up a alert when the disk space gets to a certain limit. So both of these we feel are vital to the tool and communication with you so that you are getting the information that you need about the tool. You have many tools, many services, many servers, and we just wanted to give the ability for the tool to tell you when things maybe aren't working the way that they should. Okay? Now, another good practice, best practice, which we feel is not only for this tool but all of our tools, is to make sure that you configure this tool to run as a service. Now, if you go under the bin folder from wherever you installed ADAudit Plus, you are going to see an install-nt-service.bat. So we have a batch file called install-nt-service. And what that does is it actually engages ADAudit Plus to be a service. So here, if we come under Manage Engine, you'll see that I have my ADAudit Plus functioning as a service, and I have a service account, ADAudit, that is configured to run. So this is my service account running as that. In week 1, we covered the critical configurations around this service account that runs ADAudit Plus to make sure that it has least privilege. And this idea of least privilege, again, we feel is very important because of the ideas of the attacks that are going on in most organizations today. So in order to make this a least privileged account, again, go back and look at the workshop video on that, but you need read access to the security logs, that's a user right. You need the event log readers membership, which is a group. We talked about in the video on workshop 1, if you want to make it a group policy or creator or owner, my recommendation is to make it that and then take it away because you only need it for the setup. And then if you're looking at workstations and servers, you need to have that account and the local administrators on your member servers and your workstations to pull the information out of the security log. So those are some critical configurations around the service account, making sure that you have that set up, all right? So make sure under the bin folder, install NT service will get this initiated here, then you set it up, and now if you bounce the server, if you do anything else with the service will come back automatically and you don't have to worry about starting the service manually, okay? So those are some best practices as you run down. Now, I wanted to throw in a couple of more here. And really these came up this morning when I was talking with my publisher friend, and I want to make sure that you guys understand the power of ADAudit Plus. I'm assuming that most of you on this workshop are the administrators. And I wanted to show you the alerts that I have set up because I actually went through, and I've been doing so much teaching on compliance as well as just making sure that things are secure, and you'll notice all of the alerts that I have set up. You'll notice that I have fine-grained passwords. I have the domain password policy. I have information about ACLs for OUs, GPO permissions. I want to know if the default administrator account is modified in any way. I want to make sure that access through group membership is correct, especially those that have administrative privileges. Down to the server and even the domain controller's user rights, I want to make sure those are being tracked. So what I encourage you to do, and this is a bigger concept, is I'm going to point you back to our main Manage Engine website. And if you click on Active Directory and you go to Security Hardening, and at the bottom of the Security Hardening page, you'll see all these areas. These are ways to harden your Active Directory environment. And you will notice that most of these, I have alerts set up for them inside of ADAudit Plus. Because if anything changes around these areas that are related to hardening of your domain controllers, if they're changed, now your domain controller may not be secure. And you need to be notified of that. So if we start tying the bigger picture together with best practices, ADAudit Plus service account has least privilege. We have alerts set up. The alerts are real-time, so ADAudit Plus is set to real-time. And then we have all of these areas, the default reports and the custom reports, that we set up alerts for so that we can get emails in real time when critical things change. So this is really the best practice. But it's not a best practice, it's a combination of best practices put together. Now, of course, you do have the admin piece for the alerting for when things are going on, but that really fits into the bigger picture of alerting. We designed the tool to alert you when things are wrong, whether it be with the tool or whether it be outside of the tool with regard to Active Directory. Now, I'm going to finish up with talking about the fact that some want this interface, these functions, this ease of use with everything else that generates events. If you want that, then you want Event Log Analyzer. Event Log Analyzer is a big brother to ADAudit Plus when it comes to running reports on everything else. You'll notice that I have Unix, I have some applications here, network devices. This is a pretty awesome, huge tool that can do everything beyond the security log of your Windows machines. So if you want to come in here and you want to set up gathering information from your application log or your system log, you can do that. That's what Event Log Analyzer is about. You'll have your reports, you have alerts that you can set up, you have this capability so that you can see what's going on with regard to your environment, okay? So setting up these reports, I set up this report on my own, right? It's very easy to set up. I just went in, I said I want to go to this particular machine, this particular log, this event ID, and voila, now it's pulling in the information. Within a couple of clicks, I can actually review this information. So I think it's over 500 by default devices that we can actually pull the log information from and generate reports for you. Of course, you can add things under compliance, so now you're getting compliance. You'll notice here that we have all the different compliance regulations broken out for you so you don't have to do the heavy lifting. The tool's doing the heavy lifting. What you need to do is you need to define for your custom environment anything beyond what we give you for the default reports, because you're going to have some things that we don't think of. But inside of here, there's some pretty awesome things that you can run reports on, whether it be your Unix environment, your Windows environment, or even other devices. So if you want to go beyond what ADAudit Plus does, which is only the security log on Windows machines, that's when Event Log Analyzer comes in, and that's kind of a best practice of what we're pointing you to, okay? So I hope this was very informational for you. We kind of ran through some different areas of ADAudit Plus. Again, the team went through tons of information looking at the most common questions. So hopefully if you had one of those questions, we answered it. And if we didn't answer a question of a best practice, please send us the question that you have. We'd be more than happy to address that. You can send it to me. You can post it on the support. You can go to the blog area. You can go to anywhere you want. Please just communicate with us. It's a way for us to help you. So with that, that concludes our three-part series on ADAudit Plus. We probably will have one or two more ADAudit Plus workshops within the next 2 months. So please keep an eyeball out for an email and an invite about that. I know that we continue to go through AD Manager Plus and giving workshops on those. I think we'll probably be doing some workshops because these have been so successful, and some other products that we have. If you don't have the free versions of our products, please go download them. They're so easy to download and install, and you get a lot for free. So please just hit our main website, look at the different tools. If you like one tool, my guess is you're going to like the rest of the tools because they're just as easy to use, just as lightweight, and just as cost effective. So with that, I hope that you were able to ask some good questions and get your answers. Please utilize the resources that we have. We have this hardening website. If you go back, we also have our blog, which is through our community. And we have many Active Directory blogs that are coming out constantly. So please utilize these. This is not your best bet to look at features of the product. These are definitely more generic blogs. Some are detailed on products, like this is an AD Manager Plus blog, but sometimes it's just generic. So that's really the idea of the blog, is to give you a wide variety. But please communicate with us with questions. I hope you got some great information. I see that most of the questions were answered. So with that, this is Derek Melber, and for myself and the rest of the AD Solutions team here at ManageEngine, thank you so much for attending. Thank you for your support of our products, and we hope to hear from you very soon. And please have a great rest of your day. This is Derek Melber. Thanks a lot.